Now that we have completed our turbo clone, it's time to create a Rake task to enable developers to easily install our turbo clone into their main Rails application. So if we remember well, we actually did quite some work in order to make the turbo clone work inside the test dummy application. So the first thing that we did was to import JavaScript dependencies through import map. So we had to pin this Hotwire Turbo Rails JavaScript dependency here, and we had to import it inside the application.js. So that's for the front-end part, but we also had on the back-end part to add the Redis gem, and this is to be able to use Redis in order for Action Cable to work properly. So those are the two things that we did, and it would be really nice for developers using our turbo clone to be able to install it with one Rake task. So in this video, we're going to learn how to create a Rails turbo clone install Rake task so that developers can easily install our turbo clone inside their main Rails application. And to do this, we are going to rely on something called Rails templates. Rails templates have two main usage. The first one is that sometimes you want to be able to create a new Rails application with some boilerplate code already there for you. So an example would be to always have device installed in your Rails application when you do Rails new. And to do this, you would create a template and you would pass it as an argument when creating your Rails new. And it will run a script and install device for you and do a bunch of things that you want to do. And the second thing that you can do with templates is actually run some templates on existing Rails application with this command. So the Rails app template, and you specify the location of the template, and it will run some script for you. And there's actually a whole lot that you can do with Rails templates. So I will add a link to this documentation for you to have a good understanding of what you can do with templates, but we're also going to practice in this video. And just for you to have a quick look here, you can actually type within a template.rb file, you can type a lot of commands. So for example, you can generate a scaffold, add a route, launch Rails commands, launch bundle, write some commits. There's really a whole lot you can do. And if you want to check all the methods that you can use inside templates, all those methods are defined in this Rail Thor repository. I will add a link in the description as well. And there are tons and tons of methods that you can use to log things in the console or manipulate files or things like that. And we are going to learn to do all this in this video. So let's go ahead and actually, before we create our Rake task, so our Rake task will live in the lib folder inside tasks, and it will live here. We're just going to write it down very quickly. So we're going to say namespace turbo clone, and we're going to add a namespace for the same reason as always. It's to avoid naming conflicts. So that way we're going to create a task of install, and that way when the developer wants to launch the task, he or she will have to write Rails turbo clone install instead of simply Rails install. That might have some naming conflicts. And we're also going to describe the task. So we're going to write describe, and we're going to say install turbo into the application. And before we run our task, we are going to create those two templates that we need. So we're going to create one template for the JavaScript part and one template for the Action Cable and Redis part. So we're going to create a new folder that we're going to name install, and we're going to create those two templates. So the first one for the JavaScript will be called turbo with import map, And the second one for the action cable and Redis will be called turbo needs Redis. And we're going to start with the JavaScript template because it's the easiest one. And basically, there are two things that we want to do. The first one is to import this line of code here inside the app JavaScript application.js of the main Ruby on Rails application. So to do this, we're going to say append to file, and the file is actually app JavaScript application.js. And what do we want to append to this file? Well, we want to append this line here. So just going to add it. And so that's the first thing that we want to do. And the second thing that we want to do is actually to run the import map command to pin this Hotwire Turbo Rails JavaScript dependency. So we're going to write it down. We're going to say run import map and then pin Hotwired Turbo Rails, and we are going to lock the version just like we did for the installation in the test dummy application. And there is one more command that is really useful, and it's the say command, and it's really useful to actually give information to the developer about what is happening. And we will see that in the next video when we will run our task in a brand new Rails application to install our turbo clone. That way in the console, when we run the Rake turbo clone install command, we will have some useful messages displayed. So that's always very nice to have. So this is the first message that we're going to write, and here we're going to say pin turbo. So this is it for our JavaScript template. We're now going to create the Redis template, and we are going to check, the first thing that we're going to check is if Rails root and there is a config.cable YAML file. So if this file exists, then we will perform here the installation script, and otherwise we're going to say something useful to the user. So we will say something like turbo requires action cable to work, for example. And we are actually going to store this path here inside a cable config path because we will use it a bit later. So what do we want to do in order to install Redis and then to change the development adapter to Redis here? Well, the first thing we have to do is to add Redis to the gem file. So we're going to say it. We're going to say enable Redis in bundle. And we are going to read the gem file content. So we're going to say file.read, and we're going to pass the path of the gem file here. So that way. And then we are going to look at a pattern. And the pattern we're going to look for is the gem with simple quotes or double quotes, Redis, and once again, simple quotes or double quotes. Doesn't really matter if there are simple quotes or double quotes. And then we're going to say that if the gem file content contains the pattern, then what we want to do is to uncomment the lines here in the gem file that matches the pattern. So this uncomment line method here also comes from Thor. It's a really nice method that we will be able to use. And why do we do this here, this uncomment lines? It's because new Rails application comes with Redis gem inside the gem file, but this line is actually commented when the Rails application is brand new. So this is why we're going to use these uncomment lines here as a security check to make sure that Redis is in the gem file. And if there is no Redis gem in the gem file, well, we are going to add it. So we're going to say append file, and this method is also from Thor. We're going to say gem file, and we're going to say a new line with a comment, and we're going to say use Redis for action cable. And then we're going to add the gem. So we're going to say Redis, and we are going to lock the version to 4.0 here. And then we're going to run bundle install, and we're going to say that we are going to switch development cable to use Redis. And what we are going to do is actually replace the async adapter. I don't know if you remember, but by default we had this, and we want to replace it with the final version that we have. So we want to be able to use Redis in development. So to do this, we are going to say that we want to gsub file, and the file here is the config cable.yaml, and we want to replace the development and then new line, a few spaces, and adapter async. So that's what we had by default, and I'm just going to correct the typo here. We want to replace it with this, and I'm actually going to copy paste here because it will be a bit faster. So what we have is a new line and two spaces, and once again a new line and two spaces, like this. So this should work, and our template should be completed, right? Because we uncommented the gem Redis, added it to our gem file, and then changed this development adapter thing in config.cable.yaml. So we're good to go. And now the thing that we need to do to make those templates work is to actually write our Rake task. So what we need to do is to actually be able to launch this Rails app template command with the proper location of the template. So we're going actually to encapsulate this inside a method. So what we're going to say is run turbo install template path. So this is the name of our method, and it will run the command with the location equal to, and we're going to interpolate this part to file expand path, and we're going to say that we want to find those templates in the install folder that we just created here, and then we're going to interpolate the path here .rb. And then what we want here is to expand the path from the current directory. So that should do the work. And so in our installation task, the first thing that we want to do is to run the installation template that is called turbo with import map. So this is the first template for the JavaScript libraries. And then the second one is a bit more complicated because we are going to check first if Redis is actually installed on the developer's computer. So we're going to create a new method that will be called switch on Redis if available, and we're going to write it here. And we're going to create a method to check if Redis is installed. And if it's not installed, we are going to say puts run turbo clone install Redis to switch on Redis and use it in development. And so Otherwise, what we will do is actually create this task so that if users don't have Redis installed by default, they can run it a bit later. So what we're going to say is rake task, and we're going to say turbo clone install Redis, and we'll invoke this task. Of course, we didn't create it yet, but we will create it. But now we have to implement the method to check if Redis is installed. So to do this, we're going to check if we are on Windows. If we are on Windows, the command to check if Redis is installed is this one, Redis server, and we're going to add this to null. And this is the command. I'm not an expert here. I don't have Windows, but I'm better with the Mac or Linux command, which is this one. And we can actually check that it works. So let's run this command in a terminal, and of course this does nothing because this like kind of character to devnull here outputs the result of the command to devnull, so this is why we don't have any result here. But if I run this command without it, then I can see that it is installed here. And if I run this command with some nonsense here, I get an error. And to make sure that our system here works properly, we can launch the command again. So this actually returns true. And if I would check here with some nonsense, this would return false. So this effectively tests if Redis is installed on our computer. And so if Redis is installed, we have to run a rake task. So we're going to create a new namespace that we will call install. And we are going to create our Redis task. So we're going to describe it first. We're going to say switch on Redis and use it in development. And the name of the task is Redis. And we can run our template that is called turbo needs Redis. So this is how it works, right? So we have our rake task. When the user will launch the turbo clone install task, what it will do is that it will run this template with the Rails app template method. This template will run, and so we will append to the file application.js the JavaScript dependency, and then pin the dependency with the import map here. And the same is also true for the Redis and action cable dependencies, but we just check before that Redis is installed, and otherwise we prompt the user to try again when Redis is installed, and that's it. So this is how it works, and in the next video we will test that it actually works as expected, so the installation script and the whole turbo clone gem in a brand new Rails application.